Welcome back to Adventures in Raising Grands, the Lowdown. Thank you for watching, sharing, liking, and subscribing. Please be sure, if you have not shared these videos, to do so now. Someone out there may need this information. Today, this episode, we're going to be talking about PTSD in children. Many children in foster care or kinship care have PTSD. They have suffered from some type of traumatic event, even if the only traumatic event they suffered was being removed from their home. PTSD stands for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. As I said, many children who are removed from the home suffer from PTSD, and that includes our three grands. Monkey and Princess were preschoolers when they were diagnosed, which was soon after leaving their parents' home and coming to live with us. We're going to share with you what we found out by researching PTSD. Not just what it is, but what causes it, as well as possible treatments. We are also going to share with you some challenges that we have had while parenting children with PTSD. The definition of PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, is a mental health condition triggered by a traumatic event. A traumatic event is something that is very scary, dangerous, or violent. It could be something that was done to the child or to a loved one of the child. The child then has a feeling of hopelessness or fear. This comes from the dangerous or horrific events. Examples of a traumatic event are an accident, an injury, death of a loved one, or an illness of a loved one, crime, storms, violence in the home, bullying, abuse, neglect, homelessness, terrorism, and poverty, or any other type of situation that would make the child fear for its life. Not all children that experience traumatic events will develop PTSD. It depends on the child's age and development level, as well as the severity of the event, the amount of destruction that the child saw, and the history of the traumatic events in the child's life. It also depends on how the caregivers reacted to that traumatic event. PTSD is present in all economic and ethnic children. This is a widespread epidemic, and it is across the world. PTSD is diagnosed with symptoms that last longer than 1 month. Symptoms or signs of PTSD in children include, but are not limited to, feelings of helplessness and uncertainty. They could have separation anxiety, fear, and uncontrollable crying and screaming. They may regress and return to bedwetting or baby talk. They may not develop to the next stage of growth. You may see changes in their behavior, in their sleeping patterns, and also changes in their eating patterns. Older children tend to have issues and problems at school. Children that suffer may not be able to participate in activities with other children. They may complain of physical aches and pains where there is no evidence of that physical ache or pain. Children can also have a loss of awareness. They can have intense or prolonged psychological distress at external cues, which are often referred to as triggers. Children with PTSD can be very irritable, angry, and have aggressive behaviors. These children also have temper tantrums and/or meltdowns. They can be hypersensitive to sound and light. They can have exaggerated startle responses, and they can have problems with concentration. They often have difficulty sleeping, and that includes falling asleep and staying asleep. Usually this is because they have nightmares or night terrors. Sometimes because of the nightmares and night terrors, they are afraid to go to sleep. These children can have feelings of restlessness and of being lost. Often children with PTSD have impaired relationships with other children and adults. Children with PTSD suffer from anxiety and sometimes also depression. These children can have flashbacks. That is where they relive their traumatic event. These flashbacks can be during the day or at night as nightmares and night terrors. Flashbacks are usually brought on by a trigger. A trigger for a child can be anything that reminds them of the event. It can be a place, a person, a smell, or a taste. It can be anything. Trying to figure out an exact trigger is very difficult because there can also be so many different triggers. I'd like to tell you about a situation that Princess had when she was at visitation eating dinner with her father. As quoted from our case manager, nothing out of the ordinary was happening. Our little princess just became very upset. She began to cry and wanted Mimi and Papa. She said that she didn't want to be there anymore and she was afraid of him, indicating her father. She had been to the same visitation in the same building with the same people 4 or 5 times before with no problem. But this time, something had set her off. Not knowing what the trigger was or what this response was, we were only able to make guesses. We like to think that because he was eating fried chicken and the fact that when he lived with her while she was being locked in the room and other things, he used to work at a place where he fried chicken and he always smelled like fried chicken. And that's why we believe that may have been that trigger that day. What she wanted to do was become out of the area. She wanted away from them. So that is what we did. We removed her from the area and we reassured her that she was safe and loved. And that is the only thing that we were able to do. The next most important thing you need to do for a child suffering from PTSD is to get them professional help. When searching for a counselor or a therapist, look for one who has experience with children with PTSD. Make sure that it is someone that either will come to your home or is easy to get to. And most importantly, make sure that they use evidence-based practices. These are practices that have been proven to work at other times. Know that not all practices work on all children, and not all therapists and counselors are going to be the right one at the right time. You may have to try different things. The goal of the treatment should be to address those feelings of helplessness and worry. It should be able to make the child feel safe and return them to age appropriateness. We continue to struggle with nightmares and night terrors from all 3 of our children. Before Princess moved in with her father and was reunified, she was still having regular episodes of nightmares and night terrors. She often woke up screaming and yelling the words no and stop. Sometimes she didn't even wake up. We would go in to check on her and she would be still asleep. At this point, the only thing that we could do was just hug her and hold her and let her know she was safe and remind her of where she is. Monkey has nightmares, more than night terrors. He often wakes up screaming and talking about monsters and things that have trapped him. And again, we hug him and assure him that he is safe and that he's at Mimi and Papa's house. We remind him that he's wanted and that he's loved. And we've also had to purchase some anti-monster spray. If you need the anti-monster spray, let me tell you how to get it. Take a bottle, fill it with water, put a label on it that says anti-monster spray, and there you go. Automatic monster removal from your room, your home, and everywhere. It really works. Due to his bedwetting, we wake up Monkey around 8 to 10 p.m. every night. Sometimes when we wake him up, he's in the middle of a nightmare. And he stands up and he fights us and he hits and he screams. He's not sure where he is. He's very disoriented. And again, we just reassure him, hug him, tell him he's safe, remind him who we are and where he is. Our little sunshine always has issues sleeping through the night. She's been with us since she was 2 weeks old. But we've noticed in the last 6 to 8 months that she has started waking up, crying, and then falling back to sleep within minutes. It's almost like the same as Princess's night terrors. Sunshine has not been diagnosed with PTSD as of yet, but she has been diagnosed with developmental delays because of her exposure to meth, alcohol, pot, and obates prenatally. We know that she's going to have more issues as we go along, and that's another show that we will be discussing what meth does to children. We are constantly having problems with our monkey. His behaviors are very aggressive. He's been diagnosed with PTSD as well as ADHD. He needs to sleep with a night light on, and sometimes he needs to sleep with the whole bedroom light on. He does not sleep through the night. He often wakes up between 2 and 4 a.m. Sometimes he can't go back to sleep, and he comes to the couch and he lays in here. Or he comes into our room and sleeps next to the bed. He also tends to search the kitchen for food and eats random things and leaves the garbage in the windowsill or underneath the couch. Monkey has extreme issues with schedule changes. He must be on a regular schedule for school and bedtime. He gets angry and he throws things and he cries. Any kind of change of schedule for him is a trigger. And many of his other triggers are not known. But we do know that he does have a trigger. We've been working with him. When we drive to the other side of town, close to where he lived with his mom and dad, he becomes very agitated and upset because he thinks he's going to have to go back. He's been removed and returned 3 times before. We continue with the daily struggle of trying to know what his triggers are and helping all 3 of our grands, even though we only have Princess for a few hours a week. Monkey continues to be in therapy. We take a lot of time to continue to reassure them all that they're safe and that we will keep them safe. We also make sure that they know that they are loved and that they are wanted. At this point, we do all that we can to continue with normalcy and to keep them on schedules and constantly reassuring them. Now it is time for our adventure challenge. This is when we challenge you to do something with your grands, and you take a picture and you send it to our email that's located at the end of this video. This week's adventure challenge is to ride a bike, any kind of bike. It could even be a big wheel, with your grands, and get a picture of your grands riding their bikes. Here are some photos of our grands riding their bikes. Watch for the next episode of The Lowdown. We will be discussing support. The support that's needed for grandparents on this adventure of raising grandchildren. We will also be listing some resources as well, so be sure to tune in. See you next time. Don't forget to send in those photos.